The alien ruler smiled. Your love means more than my crown, she whispered. Stardust diplomacy. The summons arrived while Tessa was knee-deep in bureaucratic nonsense, arguing with a customs official about the classification of Earth's most valuable export, chocolate. The message bore the unmistakable sigil of the Liriani Empire, a spiraling nebula encircled by 7 stars, shimmering against a backdrop of deepest indigo. Well, that's unexpected, she muttered, dismissing the flustered official with a wave. Tessa Novak, diplomatic specialist for the Terran Alliance, had built her career on resolving the problems no one else could touch. She'd brokered peace between methane-breathing hive minds and silicon-based colonists. She'd once talked a sentient black hole out of consuming a research station. But the Liriani? They were famously isolationist, communicating with other species only to issue demands or warnings. The transport vessel sent to collect her resembled a manta ray sculpted from liquid silver, its engines humming with a resonance that made her teeth tingle. Inside, everything gleamed with an organic luminescence that adjusted to her movements, creating subtle pathways of light beneath her feet. Your presence is unexpected, said a voice that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Empress Rylan does not typically request audiences with lesser species. Tessa smiled thinly. How flattering. I take it you're my welcoming committee? A figure materialized from what she'd assumed was a decorative alcove. Tall, with iridescent blue skin that shifted patterns like oil on water, he bowed with precise formality. I am Sentinel Drav, personal guard to her luminance. You will be scanned, catalogued, and prepared before presentation. Prepared? Tessa raised an eyebrow. Your current attire is unsuitable. Your scent is distracting. Your posture indicates multiple skeletal misalignments. She laughed, a sound that seemed to startle him. Well, when you put it like that, I feel positively charming. Lead on, Sentinel. The preparation process was invasive, thorough, and deeply irritating. Tessa endured being scrubbed, scented, and dressed in flowing garments that seemed to shift between solid and gas. By the time she was led to the imperial chamber, her diplomatic smile was firmly fixed in place, masking her growing annoyance. The chamber defied conventional architecture. Gravity seemed optional, with platforms floating at various levels. Beings she assumed were courtiers drifted in loose formation above, while the floor beneath her feet responded to each step with ripples of light. And there, on a dais that hovered at the center of everything, sat Empress Rylan. The Empress was not what Tessa had expected. Intelligence briefs described a tactical genius who had unified warring Liriani factions through a combination of military precision and ruthless efficiency. They failed to mention her striking presence, tall and lithe, with skin like polished obsidian threaded with luminous purple veins. Her eyes, entirely silver with no visible pupils, fixed on Tessa with unnerving intensity. Approach, said Rylan, her voice carrying the harmonic complexity distinctive to Liriani speech, as if multiple tones were layered into each word. Tessa stepped forward, offering the traditional Liriani greeting, a complex gesture involving both hands that she'd practiced for hours. She botched it spectacularly when her foot caught on the rippling floor and she stumbled. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Several courtiers actually recoiled. Perfect first impression. To everyone's surprise, including Tessa's, the Empress's expression shifted minutely, something almost like amusement flickering across her features. Terran diplomat Novak, Rylan said, you move with the grace of a newborn quadruped. Thank you, your luminance, Tessa replied with a straight face. I practice daily. Another ripple through the court, this time of shock. No one spoke to the Empress with such casual irreverence. Rylan leaned forward slightly. You are either exceptionally brave or profoundly foolish. I find the line between the two is remarkably thin, your luminance. The Empress studied her for a long moment. You are here because your species presents an anomaly. You achieve results disproportionate to your capabilities. It is curious. We make up for our biological shortcomings with tenacity and caffeine, Tessa said. Also, we're quite fond of impossible situations. They bring out our best qualities. Such as insolence. Such as adaptability. Rylan gestured, and the chamber emptied with swift efficiency until only Sentinel Drav remained at a respectful distance. The Terran Alliance has requested trade routes through the Veil Nebula, the Empress said. This territory has been Liriani's sovereign space for millennia. And would remain so, Tessa countered. We seek passage, not ownership. To what end? Mutual prosperity. Your empire commands remarkable resources but lacks certain delicacies our worlds produce. Meanwhile, we need access to the crystalline formations unique to the nebula's outer rings. For weapons manufacture, Ryland stated flatly. For medical technology, Tessa corrected. The crystal's resonance frequencies can accelerate cellular regeneration. The Empress's silver eyes narrowed. You would have me believe humans seek healing tools rather than tactical advantage. I would have you verify it yourself. Open limited trade, observe the results, then decide whether to expand or terminate the arrangement. Ryland stood in a fluid motion, descending from her dais to stand directly before Tessa, close enough that the diplomat could feel a subtle electromagnetic field emanating from the Empress's skin. You offer terms with built-in safeguards, she observed. This is unexpected. I find transparency works better than subterfuge when dealing with beings who can literally see through walls, Tessa replied, nodding toward Drav, whose multispectrum vision was legendary even among his own kind. Something shifted in the Empress's demeanor, a softening perhaps, or simply curiosity. You will stay as our guest while I consider your proposal, Rylan announced. Sentinel Drav will show you to appropriate accommodations. Before Tessa could respond, alarms shrieked to life. The chamber's lights pulsed red, and Drav moved with startling speed to the Empress's side. Perimeter breach, he reported, his voice calm despite the situation. Security protocols engaged. Ryland's expression hardened. Location. The eastern approach. Targeting systems indicate. The explosion cut him off, rocking the entire chamber. Tessa was thrown sideways as the floor beneath them buckled. Years of crisis training kicked in, and she rolled to her feet, scanning for threats and exits. What she saw instead was Rylan, poised and focused despite the chaos, issuing commands through a holographic interface that had materialized around her wrist. The Empress moved with practiced efficiency, but Tessa noticed what others might miss, a subtle tremor in her left hand, a tightness around her silver eyes. Fear. Not for herself, but for her people. Another explosion, closer this time. Part of the chamber wall disintegrated, revealing the void of space beyond, immediately contained by emergency force fields that shimmered into existence. Targeted assault, Drav announced, positioning himself between the Empress and the breach. Signatures match Krell technology. The Krell Imperium? Tessa asked, surprised. They signed a non-aggression pact with Earth 3 cycles ago. Ryland's gaze snapped to her. You have information on Krell attack patterns? Better, Tessa replied grimly. I've got override codes for their targeting systems. Part of the pact negotiations included emergency protocols. The Empress hesitated only briefly before extending her wrist, offering access to her command interface. If you betray this trust, Ryland said quietly, there will not be enough atoms left of your world to form dust. Tessa's fingers flew across the alien controls, adapting to their sensitivity. Understood. But maybe save the threats until after I've prevented us from being vaporized. For the first time, something like a genuine smile curved the Empress's lips. Acceptable terms. They worked in seamless coordination, Tessa inputting the complex sequence of codes while Rylan routed them through Liriani defense networks. Drav provided tactical updates as Imperial forces engaged the attackers. The assault lasted 28 minutes. When it ended, the Krell vessels had retreated, their primary weapons disabled by Tessa's override codes. In the aftermath, as damage reports flowed in and medical teams attended to the injured, Ryland found Tessa staring out at the stars through a viewpoint that had been revealed when a section of decorative paneling had collapsed. "You endangered yourself unnecessarily," the Empress said, moving to stand beside her. "Your diplomatic immunity would have allowed you to evacuate with the first response team." Tessa shrugged. "And miss all the excitement? Besides, running away makes for poor negotiation leverage." "Is that what this was? A negotiation tactic?" "No," Tessa said simply. "That was just doing the right thing." Ryland studied her with those silver eyes that seemed to see everything. The Krell would not have attacked without assurance of success. Someone provided them with our defense configurations. "A traitor in your court?" "Perhaps." The Empress's voice had gone cold. "Or perhaps a convenient human diplomat arriving just as we face an unprecedented attack." Tessa met her gaze steadily. "If I wanted to sabotage your empire, your luminance, I would have let the Krell finish the job." A long moment passed between them, tension humming like a drawn wire. Finally, Ryland nodded. "Indeed. Which leaves us with a more troubling question. Who benefits from derailing negotiations between our peoples?" "Precisely." The Empress turned to leave, then paused. "You will join me for the Strategic Council. Your perspective may prove valuable." As Tessa watched her go, she realized two things simultaneously. She had just been drawn into imperial politics far beyond her diplomatic brief, and she found herself inexplicably fascinated by an empress who could threaten planetary destruction one moment and acknowledge an enemy's tactical insight the next. "Well," she murmured to herself, "this should make for an interesting report." Sovereign hearts. The Strategic Council chamber of the Liriani Empire was unlike anything Tessa had ever experienced. The room itself seemed alive, walls pulsing with bioluminescence that shifted in response to the emotional currents of its occupants. Around a hovering table of crystalline alloy sat the highest-ranking officials of the Empire, their expressions ranging from barely concealed hostility to cautious curiosity. Empress Ryland stood at the head, her obsidian skin reflecting the ambient light in hypnotic patterns. Beside her, looking decidedly out of place, stood Tessa. "The attack was precisely coordinated," said Admiral Vex, a battle-scarred Liriani with enhanced cybernetic senses replacing what appeared to be half his face. "The Krell knew our shield harmonics, patrol schedules, and security protocols. They also knew exactly when our human guest would arrive," added Counselor Naira, her tone dripping with suspicion. Her elaborate headdress of floating metallic filaments quivered with each accusatory glance toward Tessa. "If the diplomat were involved," Ryland countered, "why would she provide the override codes that disabled the Krell weapons?" "To gain your trust," Naira hissed. "Humans are known for their elaborate deceptions." Tessa cleared her throat. "With respect, Counselor, if we were orchestrating this attack, we would have sent someone who could at least stand upright in your gravity without looking like a drunk penguin." Admiral Vex made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Ryland's lips twitched slightly before she regained her imperial composure. "The question remains," the Empress said, "who benefits from preventing an alliance between our peoples?" The room fell silent until Sentinel Drav spoke from his position near the door. "Emperor Jareth of the Solaran Dominion has been unusually active in the border sectors. His emissaries have been observed meeting with Krell commanders." Tessa frowned. "The Solarans? I thought they were primarily concerned with the Andromeda expansion." "They were," Ryland confirmed, "until Jareth ascended to the throne after his father's timely demise. He has ambitions that extend well beyond his current borders." The strategic display in the center of the table shimmered to life, showing stellar maps and trade routes. Tessa noticed something immediately. "These outer systems," she said, pointing to a cluster of planets on the Empire's periphery. "They're minimally defended. They are mining colonies and agricultural outposts," Admiral Vex explained dismissively. "Of little strategic value. Except," Tessa countered, "they form a perfect staging ground for a multi-pronged assault. If I were planning to destabilize the Empire, I'd start by taking these worlds, cutting off 15% of your resource chain, then pushing inward along these trade corridors. The council members exchanged uneasy glances as Rylan studied the map more closely. "The human assessment has merit," she finally said. "Admiral, redirect defensive resources to reinforce these sectors. Counselor Naira, I want diplomatic channels opened with the colony worlds, ensure they understand our commitment to their protection." "They are distant outposts," Naira protested. "Hardly worth." "They are my people," Rylan cut her off, silver eyes flashing. "And they have been neglected for too long. This changes now." As the council dispersed to implement the Empress's directives, Tessa found herself alone with Rylan. The Empress's posture had changed, a subtle tension visible in the set of her shoulders. "You disapprove of how we've governed our outer territories," Rylan observed. "It's not my place to approve or disapprove," Tessa replied. "But I've seen this pattern before. Core worlds prosper while boundary planets struggle, creating resentment that enemies can exploit. Your honesty is uncomfortable. Most valuable things are." Rylan moved to a view screen that displayed the vast expanse of her empire, countless stars and worlds under her protection. "I was trained from birth to prioritize strength, to view compassion as weakness. The empire must be feared to be respected. And yet here you are, reconsidering that approach because of a handful of farming planets." The Empress turned to her with an unreadable expression. "Because of a human who sees value where my advisors see only resources." The moment was interrupted by an urgent alert. Emperor Jareth of the Solaran Dominion was broadcasting on all frequencies, a formal declaration of his intentions. His holographic image materialized in the center of the chamber. Tall and imposing with golden skin that seemed to emit its own light, Jareth exuded aggressive confidence. "Empress Rylan," he began, his voice smooth as polished glass. "I speak to you and your people with an offer. The Liriani Empire has grown stagnant under your rule, clinging to outdated traditions while the galaxy evolves around you. Surrender your outer territories to Solaran protection, and I will ensure a peaceful transition." Rylan's expression remained impassive. "And if I decline this generous offer? Then I will demonstrate the cost of pride," Jareth replied. "Beginning with your human pet." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. "Well," Tessa said dryly, "I feel special." "You should," Rylan replied, surprising her. "Jareth would not threaten you specifically unless he feared your influence. Something has him worried. Or someone told him about our working relationship." The Empress nodded. "The traitor remains hidden among us." Over the next several days, Tessa found herself unexpectedly integrated into the Imperial command structure. Her unique perspective on defensive strategies proved valuable as Jareth began testing the Empire's boundaries with small skirmish forces. More surprising was the change in Rylan herself. The Empress began making direct communications with the outer colony worlds, listening to their concerns, deploying resources to address long-ignored needs. Word spread quickly through the Empire, their ruler was evolving, becoming something more than just a distant sovereign. "You're building loyalty," Tessa observed one evening as they reviewed status reports in the Empress's private study. "Not through fear, but through connection. Is that not how your Earth nations function? The good ones, yes. The others?" Tessa shrugged. "History hasn't been kind to empires built solely on intimidation." Rylan set aside the reports and studied Tessa with those unsettling silver eyes. "When I first summoned you, I sought to understand the human anomaly, how a physically unimpressive species manages to forge alliances with beings far more advanced. And your conclusion? You see patterns others miss. You value connections that seem inefficient but create resilience. You are." The Empress hesitated, searching for the word. "Adaptable in ways my people have forgotten." Tessa felt something shift between them, a barrier dissolving, perhaps, or a new understanding forming. "High praise from someone who can manipulate gravity with a thought," she said softly. "Not high enough," Rylan replied, moving closer. "You have changed me," Tessa Novak. Changed how I see my responsibility to my people. The moment was interrupted by Sentinel Drav, who appeared at the doorway with urgent news. The traitor has been identified. Counselor Naira was caught transmitting defense codes to Solaran operatives. Apprehend her, Rylan commanded. That will be difficult, Drav replied grimly. She has fled to Emperor Jareth's flagship. They approach with a battle fleet. The confrontation came faster than anyone anticipated. Jareth's forces struck at the heart of the Empire, bypassing the newly reinforced outer defenses thanks to Naira's intelligence. But what they found was not the vulnerable target they expected. The colony worlds, grateful for Rylan's renewed attention, had rallied to her cause. Civilian vessels converted to support ships flooded the defense grid. Trading partners, including Earth's rapidly deployed forces, joined the response. On the command deck of her flagship, Rylan directed the defense with calculated precision while Tessa coordinated with the Allied vessels. They moved in perfect synchronization, anticipating each other's decisions, compensating for weaknesses, amplifying strengths. When Jareth's flagship broke through the outer defensive line, Rylan made a decision that shocked her commanders. Prepare my shuttle, she ordered. I will face him directly. That's suicide, Tessa protested. He wants you isolated. No, the Empress replied with quiet certainty. He wants the Empire fragmented, its people divided against each other. I will show him our unity. Before Tessa could argue further, Rylan took her hand. The touch sent a current of something like electricity through her skin, the Empress's bioelectric field harmonizing with her own nervous system. You have shown me that true strength comes from connection, Rylan said. Now I must demonstrate that truth. The Empress's shuttle launched, a small vessel against the massive Solaran flagship. But she was not alone, hundreds of ships from throughout the Empire moved with her in formation, a physical manifestation of newfound unity. Emperor Jareth, confronted with this display and the knowledge that his intelligence advantage had evaporated with Naira's exposure, opened communication channels. Impressive theatrics, he said, his golden features tight with restrained anger. But ultimately futile. Not theatrics, Rylan replied. Evolution. The Liriani Empire is transforming, Jareth. We extend an offer of alliance, not surrender. You would negotiate after I threatened war. I would offer you the same chance for growth that I have discovered. The Empress gestured to Tessa, who stood beside her. Through unexpected connections. The negotiations that followed reshaped the political landscape of the galaxy. The Solaran Dominion, while not surrendering its ambitions, agreed to collaborative development of shared border regions. The Liriani Empire opened itself to greater exchange with other civilizations, beginning with expanded Terran trade routes. Months later, as the diplomatic frameworks were being finalized, Tessa found Rylan in the Imperial Gardens, a vast biodome where plants from across the galaxy grew in harmonic arrangements. The Terran Alliance is impressed, Tessa said, joining the Empress beneath a tree with luminous blue leaves. You've created a new model for interspecies cooperation. We created it, Rylan corrected. Your contract with the diplomatic corps ends next week. Yes, Tessa confirmed. They're eager to have me back to apply the Liriani approach to other negotiations. The Empress was silent for a moment, her silver eyes reflecting the garden's ambient light. And if I requested your permanent assignment here? As an official liaison? That would be unprecedented. As is much of what we've accomplished. Tessa smiled. Are you offering me a job, Your Luminance? I am offering you a place, Rylan replied, her voice softer than Tessa had ever heard it. Here. With me. The implications hung in the air between them, no longer just diplomat and empress, no longer representatives of their respective civilizations, but two beings who had discovered something neither had expected. The Terran Alliance might have concerns about divided loyalties, Tessa said carefully. And what of your concerns? I'm more worried about your royal court having collective apoplexy when they realize I still can't perform the proper greeting gestures. Rylan laughed, a sound that had once been rare but now came more freely. They will adapt. As we all have. As the twin suns of the Liriani homeworld set in a spectacle of color, Tessa made her decision. Some bridges were meant to be crossed, some boundaries meant to be transcended. Yes, she said simply. And in that moment, in a garden filled with the combined beauty of countless worlds, an empress who had once ruled through fear and a diplomat who specialized in impossible situations began writing a new chapter in galactic history, one defined not by power or protocol, but by the revolutionary potential of connection. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.